Díomh a cóirde agus fáilte go dtí an cruinniú seo. A very good evening to you, one and all, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or another platform and joining us here this evening for this live meeting. I'm Mary Lou, as you know, and I'm joined by Pearse Doherty from County Donegal and by Conor Murphy from County Armagh, not just Armagh, South Armagh. He would want me to say that very specifically. We're delighted to have you here with us this evening, and it's kind of hard to believe that it's a year tomorrow, the anniversary of the last election, a huge election in the 26 counties, an election that was all about change and progress, an election that for so many people was about changing government. And for the first time here in the South, having Sinn Féin in government and leading government. And we know that since then we have had a very, very tough year. It's been very difficult. Got into government, but we also know, and I think most importantly, that the appetite for change hasn't gone away. And all of the big issues that we discussed a year ago and more are still the big issues and the big challenges for our country, north and south, east and west. So what we want to do this evening is to just get back to many of those crucial issues with you and for you. So we have, I don't know, and a huge amount of questions have come in. I want to thank you all for them. And between myself and Conor and Pearse, we are going to try to give you the benefit of our very considerable wisdom. Isn't that right, lads? And to answer the questions. And they're really interesting. I'm going to start with the first two from Phelim and from Wesley, who ask about the election. And I suppose that's as good a place to start as any. And you're asking, you know, will there be a chance to form a new government, Phelim, after the next election, a left government, a different government? He is asking about the number of candidates that we run. So let me just answer those, I suppose, very directly. Firstly, yes, there is still every possibility, every opportunity to have a government that's all about progress, that's not about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. That, of course, is possible, and it's in your hands. It's in the hands of the electorate. We'll go to the next election asking you again for your mandate to be in government. We hope to lead the next government. And to get that done, Wesley, to answer your question, yes, we need to run more candidates. Certainly, we know that we need as many votes and as many seats as we can garner to ensure that we have the strongest possible government. It's amazing, actually, that when the last election was over, the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael was that they had to go into government and keep us out so that we would have stable, steady government. I think the last 6-7 months have demonstrated that they've been anything but steady, anything but stable. And we're back kind of at page one with them. Sheila Fagan is on, Conor, and she is herself and lots of her friends in their 20s. The lockdowns have been really, really tough, but it's given them time to reflect also. She's reflecting on things that were hard and unfair before COVID. People have gone through lots of things, but have now new ideas, and she's expressing this desire for a big change, and she wants Sinn Féin to be that change. So she's asking, can we? And by the way, she's hinting here, Conor, because she says, please say yes.
Well, I'm very happy to say yes. And I think that we obviously have the policies in the South, and we've been a very articulate and forceful opposition. And you can see the difference in politics in the last year that haven't, although we wanted to be in government, we have a very diligent an opposition which is actually holding a government to account. In the North, while we're in government, and we've obviously been trying to deal with the pandemic, we're trying to deal with the fallout of Brexit and managing the protocol and all those ranges, we've still managed to bring forward very radical policies in relation to housing. The biggest shake-up in social and public housing in the history, or certainly in the history of the last 50 years in the North, set aside substantial budgets to build new housing to support people getting ownership of their own homes, to support the vulnerable and communities during the pandemic, and also to support businesses and workers. We've got hundreds of millions of pounds worth of support out on the ground, and we've pushed that towards those who are most in need. So I think even with the challenges that we have faced, we've demonstrated we have radical politics and policies north and south. And I can assure Sheila that we will, in government north and south, press for the most radical alternatives to what has gone in the past. No return to all of that type of government, north or south, pre-COVID, and constitutional change very much on the horizon for a new Ireland and an absolutely fair and just Ireland.
So the answer to your question, Sheila, is yes. And I think it's fair to say, Pearse, that even, as the leaders of opposition here, we've managed to affect a lot of change. I'm thinking particularly in recent days around that court judgment in respect of insurance and business disruption, and the way the insurance industry tried to really knock back business in a way that was, you always argued, was completely unfair. And so I just want to recognise that change. And Gavin has a question here about mortgage interest rates. He's asking, Pearse, what are we going to do about that? Because our rates are much higher than across the EU.
Yeah, and look, we just seen in the last couple of weeks that the state here in the south has the highest interest rates now across the European Union. We used to be the second highest rates. We're now officially the worst in the class, the highest interest rates, and twice the average across Europe. And it just shows you, and we've been very critical of the fact that banks have been making huge profits over many, many years now, and indeed not paying any tax in terms of those profits. And those profits are generated through charges that they're charging you, and also the interest rates that they're charging in relation to mortgages. So what to answer the question, we actually drafted legislation on this a number of years ago, and that would be to give the governor of the central bank the powers where they deemed that there was a kind of market failure to intervene and to set an upper limit in relation to interest rates. Interestingly, actually, Fianna Fáil then published their own legislation, which stopped us progress in ours because they put it to the doll before us. But that was Michael McGrath who put that forward, and now he's dropped it like a hot potato. But it's something that we want to pursue, because this type of rip-off shouldn't be happening here. We have a new entrant last year into the market in the south. This is a European smaller kind of operator, but it shows that they can offer interest rates for mortgage at a fraction of what the main lenders are here. So we're very, very conscious that that's something that can be done. The other thing, Mary Lou, is the other part of this here is there's a big decision in the next number of days in relation to Ulster Bank and the potential of Ulster Bank withdrawing from the market here in the south. The governor and the central bank have confirmed to me that if that happens, what it's likely to do is push up interest rates even further, which means making things worse. Why? Because there will be less competition. There'll be bigger monopoly between AIB, and so we can't allow that to happen. And we've been calling on the central bank and the minister to directly intervene now, so that maybe one of our smaller banks like Permanent TSB or something like that there, if they were to be pulling out, would buy up the loan book. But our first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that Ulster Bank stays here, that the jobs that it provides, that the community is there, and we don't like the hands-off stance that the government or the central bank has taken to this so far.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pearse. And that hands-off approach was very evident too, and many others, as you know only too well. Paul Kelly has a question about a united health service. Conor, I think it's fair to say that over the last year, anybody who thought for a second that we didn't need big investment and change in our public health system, north and south nationally, has woken up. I hope at this stage we've got Sláinte care here in the south. We've got the Bengoa process in there, but we need an Irish National Health Service, don't we? And I mean, COVID demonstrates that game, set and match.
Actually, absolutely, Mary-Lou, and we need one that is properly resourced and funded. And the difficulty with our National Health Service in the north is that it has suffered from about 9 or 10 years of Tory government and austerity cuts, which has cut it basically to the bone. And it struggles every winter with the winter flus and that season. And this year it has the pandemic. So people there have done absolutely remarkable work, and we're entirely indebted to them. We have approved a £500 thank you payment for all health workers in the north. But clearly, it has opened up the debate, which already was beginning, because after people got talking about the economy in terms of a United Ireland, what would a new economy look like? The next question on most people's lips: what will the All Ireland health service look like? And we want to see one which is properly resourced, which is free at the point of access, and we want to ensure that that rolls out right across all 32 counties, and that's doable. I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that we need to value all public services and we need to invest in them.
So I think that when we've been calling for an all-Ireland approach, all of us, like as a team nationally, from the beginning of this pandemic, and I mean, because of the dynamic of political unionism in the north, for sure, but also because the government in Dublin has been very slow, very lethargic, and we haven't achieved that point. So there's a danger in it, isn't there, for us not to have an all-Ireland health service? Like there's a penalty for us. I think we've learned that lesson. I hope we've learned that lesson.
Yes, I think so, absolutely.
Yeah, Pearse, should Micheál Martin go to the United States of America for St. Patrick's Day? And Patrick McCabe is on saying he thinks he shouldn't. He thinks that he should lead by example. We've Jim Quinn on. Hello, Jim. And Jim is saying, if the Taoiseach goes to America for Paddy's Day, can we get the same flight, or do we have to wait for the next one? Should he go?
No, well, look, he shouldn't go. That's my clear advice in this. And look, we have to put everything in context. And we in Sinn Féin understand and appreciate and work very hard in relation to the relationships between America and Ireland, and the huge important relationships, not least in relation to the peace process, the Good Friday Agreement, but all other ties as well in terms of economic ties. And we're very conscious of the undocumented Irish and the opportunities that may exist now to push that ahead. But we are in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a pandemic where people have lost their lives, when community and individuals are making huge sacrifices, where there's sons and daughters out there who haven't been able to give their mothers a hug or fathers a hug for quite a while, where there's grandchildren who haven't seen their grandparents, and there's people who've been out of work and are really struggling just to get by because they haven't had a day's work for the best part of a year. There's businesses that are thinking, will I be here by St. Paddy's Day? Never mind what will happen on the other side of this. And so the message, and rightly the message, the public health message, is stay at home. So look, the relationship between the President of the United States and Ireland is a solid one. Anything that needs to be done in terms of that bilateral can be done over Zoom, over all the new technology that we're all used to now. And I think that what should happen now is that Micheál Martin should end this discussion. I really thought, Mary Lou, that this was going to be just knocked on the head. Like, I'm surprised that the Taoiseach has allowed this discussion to continue. And what we should be doing is planning some type of way of having that. That's a bit better than just this kind of Zoom meeting over the next number of days, so that we can have something kind of meaningful in terms of St. Patrick's Day, and actually something substantial. So what a lot of people who haven't seen their loved ones for many years, the undocumented Irish, wants to know, well, what's Micheál Martin going to do? Is there an opportunity there? So that's what I think that the idea of him still thinking of travelling sends out a terrible signal. Who have made huge sacrifices, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I also just think there's just a straight up safety issue. I mean, there's the leading by example bit that Jim and Patrick are getting at, but it's also a safety thing. I mean, Michelle O'Neill, our colleague, is not travelling to Washington. Neither is Arlene Foster. Generally, some of us go over. I generally travel around that time of year, but it's not safe. So we don't believe that he should go. Another one here as well. Here's Anton. Anton has been on, and he's concerned about corruption in public life. He's particularly pointing the finger at this €81,000 salary hike for Robert Watt. That's been a huge source of huge annoyance for people. And he's also reflecting back on super junior ministers. Do you remember all of that kerfuffle? Yeah. That a big thing. He's saying to us, like, this has to stop, and we agree with that point strongly. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, this is just bonkers. Like, this is, and just remember how this came about. This is Michael McGrath, the same minister who signed the order for the increase in the super junior ministers bumping their wages up by another 17,000 on top of the 150 that they were already on as a junior minister. So after that controversy, then fast forward to December. So a number of days after he walked into the chamber and voted against student nurses being paid anything, nothing at all, he signs an order to give an increase from €211,000 to the General Secretary of the Department of Health up to 292,000, 81,000 euro of an increase. Now, you couldn't make this up. Like, that's the annual salary for 3 years of a first-year nurse in our public hospitals. And there's no scrap of paper. We've been starting to investigate this in the Finance Committee. There's no paper. There's no rationale. There's no benchmarking it against what happens in Britain. The chief medical officer or the head of the WHO is paid a fraction of that, and they're dealing with a pandemic that is global in nature. And then we have the movement of Robert Watt into the position on an interim basis. So this is, there are warnings internally from the department saying, look, Minister, this is going to trigger a number of other requests. And we know that, for example, the General Secretary of the Department, Taoiseach, may be coming vacant soon, and that will, that will look at another push up in terms of salaries there. And really what is infuriating here is that you have, a year ago, this month, we had childcare workers, who we entrust, who are qualified childcare workers who are paying the minimum wage, or paid just the minimum wage and above, out on strike just over a year ago. 2 years ago, we had our frontline nurses on strike. Last year, last December, the controversy was about student nurses not being paid, and they're still not paid. And yet, you don't have to demand, or you don't have to ask. If you're in that circle, if you're already high paid, it comes easy to get this type of increase. So I seen our colleagues in the PAC committee, the Public Account Committee, are also investigating this here, and rightly so. Matt Carthy put forward a proposal that this process be suspended because this is a waste of money, in my view, and a runaway train, and that's something I support 100%.
To show you really where people, where the priorities are. 81,000 euros of a pay increase. I mean, 81,000 euros of a salary is a really good salary, but as an increase to your salary, and as you say, nothing for the student nurses or nothing for the frontline workers, no bonus, no nothing. Conor,
the crazy thing about this here is that there was no big demand here. What happened here was the General Secretary in the Department of Taoiseach, along with the Taoiseach himself, Michael McGrath, and the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly. So the four lads sat in a room and said, we think that this position should be bumped up, and they told him to go away and think of a figure as long as it was less than 300,000 euro. Like, it is unbelievable for any public sector worker who is arguing and arguing for, and sometimes years, for a wage increase. There's a whole process where benchmarking, you have to go through it. There's independent assessment, but when you're on the inside, it's completely different.
Crazy. Conor, I was going to say to you, like, it strikes me that the contrast with the approach we've taken with colleagues on the executive in the north is very, very different. Do you want to just set out just briefly some of the things that we've done, like for student nurses, for people on the front line, just to give a flavour of the priorities in the executive and around Sinn Féin?
Yeah, well, interestingly, as Pearse was talking, it reminded me, I as Finance Minister, I was asked to give, there was a request come in to give a bonus to senior civil servants in the Department of Health for their contribution during the pandemic, which I value absolutely, but I refused to give it. I said no. And we've given a 500 thank you payment to all health workers. We've given a 500 pound payment to all full-time students, and increased the hardship funds available to them. And we've given support to student nurses as well. And while I value certainly the work that civil service doing, I had no intention of differentiating between those who are working very hard at the bottom level of the civil service and rewarding those who are working and expected and paid handsomely for it to work hard at the top level. So we have tried to introduce as much equality and fairness. I will be looking at the pay levels generally for the civil service very shortly, and we're trying to give extra support to those who are at the bottom of the ladder who need it the most. rather than that idea. And I was aghast when I heard the 81,000 myself. I thought it was an 81,000 euro salary, as you say, rather than a bonus. But I refuse to give a bonus to senior civil servants in the department. As I say, I'm very grateful for all they've done, but they are no different from the people who have swept the streets and kept us safe during the pandemic. And everybody deserves to get looked after in a fair way.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that was a moment, and fair play to you in particular, Conor, as Minister for Finance, of putting your money where your mouth is. When we say that we're indebted to the front line, that we're just not giving them a round of applause and platitudes, that you're actually, demonstrating that even in some small way. So I think that, and it's notable on the executive budget, which is much more constrained than the resources available down here. But that, folks, is the nature of politics, because as we know, politics is about choices. And on that subject, I have Cian and Zara asking about housing. Cian is asking about what we've been doing in the north with housing, because it's not just the south. You're absolutely correct, Cian. And Conor has mentioned earlier on that our minister, Deirdre Hargey, under her department, although it was Carol Nicullen who moved it, we've instigated the biggest single reform and shake-up of public housing in over 50 years, because there's big work to be done. Of that, there is no doubt. We don't have quite the same rental crisis in the north as we have here in the 26 counties. And it's not just a Dublin thing. You all know that this is right across the state. And Zara is asking about, she's a renter, they're desperate, Pearse, to buy a home for herself and her partner, they're working, they're saving, but it still feels totally, and she's asking us, and it's obviously occurred to you, Zara and Cian, that the current government are just doing the same old same. We're not even going to get into that, because, I mean, it's just depressing, quite frankly, and alarming to see Darragh O'Brien, the current Minister for Housing, literally, and I am not exaggerating, literally deliver an affordable scheme that has been designed by developers, a shared equity loan scheme that even the officials in the Department of Public Expenditure had said, this is crazy, this is not going to work, all this will do is push up house prices. So, I mean, what's that all about? Change my eye. I mean, they clearly weren't listening, Pearse, when we said to them, we need to build houses, we need to sort out rents, we need to make sure that people have the right to secure shelter and a home. So the question then is, what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, look, the question that Sarah puts is very, very clear, and there's so many, like Sarah there. So what are we going to do? Well, for renters at the minute who are in that position, whether you want to be renting for long term or you want to move on to owning your own property, what we want to do is make sure that your rent doesn't increase. So we want to rent the board, but more than that, we want to actually reduce your rent by bringing in a tax rebate, which means that we would put 1 month rent back in your pocket every single month for the next 3 years. So that's about giving you that reprieve, because rents are just completely, it's crazy that the rents that are being charged, particularly in our city centres. But as you say, Mary Lou, it's not just to Dublin or Cork, but €2,200 for rental in Dublin is just, that's how can anybody deal with that burden? So we want to freeze rents for 3 years, but we also want to reduce them. The second thing is we want to then build the capacity. So the biggest house building programme that this state has ever seen. And Ona Bryn is itching just to get started in relation to this. He has the ideas, he has the plans, working with my...
Has Pearse frozen?
Yeah, I think so.
Pearse, I think you have frozen.
The ordinary person, they're talking about houses in the 350, 400,000 euro bracket, which is completely out of anybody's range. We had a study coming in just last week, which was published by the Royal Society of Surveyors, and they were showing that people on average incomes couldn't afford the cheapest apartment in Dublin that's under construction at this point in time in the city centre. That just shows you how bad our system is. So we want to build 20,000 social, affordable and cost rental houses every year for the next 5 years, building that capacity. So that's the type of plans that we have. We're not going to do what Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael did before them, which is about, increasing competition basically for a small number of properties. This is quite simple. There is public land. We need to build public houses, and we need to build houses that are affordable and within the reach of ordinary families, and not just executives of some of our FDI companies, which is obviously the problem that we have at this point in time.
Okay, thanks for that, Pearse. And I mean, the reality is, Zara and Cian and everyone else, that really to sort this housing crisis out, and it can be sorted out, but it's not going to be sorted out by replaying the policies of the past, where you're favouring developers or landlords over and above workers, families, young people, older people who need to secure a roof over their heads. So I have concluded that for housing to be sorted out here, Sinn Féin will need to be in government. I see no evidence of Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael changing their tune. I see no evidence of the Green Party shaping or moving policy in this, and that is really a source of anger. We are angry about that because we know how immediate and pressing this issue is. I also think, by the way, for those who asked about the next election, truth is that housing will again, in our view, be the big issue again in the next election, because we're not getting the kind of change that people demanded. Look, I've loads of questions here. Orla Nicquailon, hello Orla, thanks for being with us, is asking about special education schools. Fee is asking about carers. So too is Edward, asking about carers, looking after people full-time in their own homes. Tina Gates, hello Tina, is asking wants to know why is the government not recognising the role of family carers during the pandemic? And she really did a lot of very this. Firstly, Conor, I mean, just to let people know that in terms of special education, I mean, it's been our position that children and young people with additional needs, special needs, with disability, we know need their education and their support services. So in the north, Conor, those services are open, and those children and young people can avail of those educational services.
Yeah, the special schools have stayed open, and as a matter of fact, there is a look been taken. There was an agreement between the health and the education ministers in terms of vaccination for those who will be in very close contact with very vulnerable young kids and young people who are in those schools, and also because quite a lot of our mainstream schools will have kids with special educational needs in them, which is a great thing. The more mainstream schools they can be in, the better. And the schools have remained open for children who are vulnerable and have particular challenges as well. So they're like skeleton staff in a lot of the schools looking after kids. So those services have continued. We have tried to channel more money into special educational needs each year. The last two budgets I've done, we've tried to find additional money for special educational needs, and we continue to do that. Like all of our other very vital public services, the years of austerity budgets have taken their toll, and we're struggling. And this year's budget, having received what we thought was a decent budget last year and a start of a new beginning, we're back to flat cash budget, no additional monies for any of the departments, which in effect means a cut because salaries go up, costs go up, and so we're really struggling to provide those services. But the special educational needs service is one that we've really tried our best to find money for over the last number of years, and we've put support into those schools to try and keep those kids looked after.
We want special education back up and running here in this jurisdiction as well, in the south. And we know we're so conscious the hardship that families have gone through, and also then the concerns of the special needs assistants and teaching staff who care for the children and young people who really are very, very worried and concerned. And we won't rehearse all of the mess that the government here made of things, but I think certainly the experience in the north is that you can have these services up and running, and you can do it safely if you plan and if you invest. And I very much hope, fingers crossed, that come Thursday we will actually see those services finally back up and running. But the delay and the stress and confusion has been desperate for people. And we know that, and our colleague Donnacha O'Leary has been really, really active on that point. All those questions, Pearse, about carers and family home carers, and I mean, this is something that always comes up, isn't it? They really are the forgotten group in Irish society in many ways.
Yeah, and the work that they do is kind of invisible to government, but we know, and we know time and time again that the invaluable work that they do, the burden that they lift off of the state, the huge role that they play in society. Yet, even right in the middle of this pandemic and dealing with the vaccination programme, it is hugely frustrating. Claire Curran on the Week in Politics talking about this morning or this afternoon. David Cullinane has been trying to get the details in relation to when did it fall into the vaccination schedule, and you're getting different answers every couple of days, and that's hugely infuriating. And it's just probably symbolic of the fact that they're not central to government's thinking. And I think there's a huge mistake here where we need to actually support carers. There is because of the pandemic, there's a lack of respite services right across it, and that was always a big problem even before we had the pandemic. It is a major problem now, and there's a lot of pressure on carers, and it's something that we need to make sure that is front loaded, and we provide those supports and services to many carers. But I think what the least you could do is to be transparent, to have them at central to the vaccination programme. They're not asking to jump the queue. At this stage, they're just looking to find out where they are in the queue. And the fact that we've had 4 different answers in the last number of days is really disappointing to them and indeed to us who are trying to get the answers for them. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And in fact, the caring that is done by home carers, certainly in the 26 counties, is estimated at about 60% of all caring that's carried out in the state. So this is an incredibly valuable cohort of people doing just incredible work. So, and we've promised before, and I want to promise again that we will keep in touch with all of you who are carers. And in fact, I'm doing a meeting with the big group of carers later this week. And we are very conscious that this is an issue that needs to be pushed to the fore. Alison has been in touch asking about the early years sector, and asking about and reminding us that 30,000 marched. We recalled that earlier in terms of pay and conditions, and you're still fighting to be heard. And that's right, Alison. We haven't forgotten you. We have a very ambitious plan for early education and childcare. And in fact, what we will do in the course of maybe February is do a specific meeting just to go back over this ground again and to discuss our plans out again. We're being asked here about retirement. Nora Hughes, hello Nora. You are asking about the issue of turning 65 and access to a pension. Do I get my pension or do I have to go looking for another job? And then you're saying on the one hand, and then others who don't want to leave work and have to retire at the age of 65. And Pearse, these are both issues we have sought to address. Our colleague John Brady, when he was in that brief, did a huge amount of work moving legislation to make sure that you didn't have to leave at 65. But we are also absolutely intent, and by the way, this is for Ireland as a whole, that at the age of 65, if you want to retire, that you should be able to retire with your pension. I mean, that's the bottom line for us, and we're still going to press that case.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's that. Conor, just on the mother and baby homes, Anne is on Twitch here. This might be the last one that we get to. Shocked that the records from the mother and baby homes were being destroyed. This is the testimony that survivors gave. Anne feels this was giving insult to injury after everything that the women had been through. Is there anything we can do to stop this? Unfortunately, given that it seems that testimony was destroyed, it's certainly we're going to pursue it and get answers to that. But that's disgraceful. In the north, we had the Gillespie report, and work is underway now, Conor.
Yeah, and the agreement
Yeah.
there was, and it was obviously like all of the reports from these institutions, a very harrowing report with just absolute tragic cases of people who were separated from their mothers who did not know where their babies went, and babies who didn't realise where they had come from, and as you say, records destroyed and cover up happening, all facilitated by the states, north and south, who either turned a blind eye or actively facilitated this going on, which is absolutely outrageous. But there was the report produced by Judith Gillespie. The agreement which the executive got the report is to co-design with the victims of the mother and baby homes a process of investigation over the next 6 months, which will be put in place then, which will allow, and I hope we don't have the same issue with the destruction of records, but I think anybody attempting to do that in the here and now should be certainly guilty of a criminal offence, because there is clearly going to be an investigation and inquiry shape or form it takes, and that will be worked through with those whose voices need to be heard in this, and there's a commitment to doing that in the north with those people. And this involved not just the Catholic Church, it also involved Church of Ireland institutions in the north too, but to make sure that we work with people, get the right process which people want to see happening, and get all of the answers that people need and the issues that need to be addressed as a consequence of that. So it's going to be a big challenge, but it's one that we're very much committed to doing the right thing for people in relation to.
And I mean, I think we can lead the way in the north in designing and with victims and survivors the right process, because the experience is not just in the mother and baby homes, but Magdalene laundries, industrial schools. Time and time again, the state keeps making the same mistakes all over again. Pearse, just very briefly to you before I wrap things up, and we've lots more questions, friends, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but thank you for your enthusiasm and your interest. Here's a lot of people on to us about Irish unity, prospect of a referendum, the need to prepare. I mean, we have been emphasising now in the here and now that need to prepare. The government isn't listening yet, but we have to get them to listen, because the preparation is key.
Yeah, and look, and you know, in the middle of everything that we're going through and all of the challenges, at the same time, for me, and I know for the rest of the team, it's a really exciting time to be an Irish Republican, to be involved in Sinn Féin, because we are writing currently a new chapter of history, and we're writing a new future for our island. And I'm very confident we can see all the trends that are there. You've seen the opinion poll that came out in terms of the majority of people in the north want to see 5 years. And crucially, we've been saying it for I don't know how long now, but many, many years, that the preparation work needs to happen. So what does that mean? We need a white paper from the Irish government in relation to Irish unity to start that formal discussion. We would need an all-party committee so that we can start discussing the challenges, opportunities, and what United Ireland or a new Ireland would look like. And we need a civic forum where as many people across the island of Ireland can be heard as part of that debate and shaping what a new Ireland looks like. I am extremely encouraged that, look, the people, like a lot of stuff, is a way ahead of where the government in the south are at this. I believe that we will catch up, because catch up, but this creates huge opportunities for us. And look, we just talked about, you know, the challenges in terms of health service, but also the other challenges, the issues in terms of low pay, the proper decent work, the idea of building a proper childcare early years sector, which is a public provision. You know, all of that now can be reimagined as part of this new Ireland. And last year, this time, everybody was talking about change. Not only were they hoping for change of Sinn Féin being part of leading the next government, we weren't, but we will be. But there's bigger change, in my view, on the horizon. And, you know, I'm delighted. And I see all the numbers coming through. We get the reports in terms of the number of people who are joining Sinn Féin on a daily basis. I guess, Jeremy, then you be puarcha the nehra, be puarcha dan tahi, be puarcha dan rud, at their low Sinn Féin, I guess, be loch balriart safarchi.
Yeah, Shin on air in a Gurmagat Pearse. So listen, my friends, that is as much as we have time for this evening. Thank you so much for all of your questions. We will do this again. There is no doubt that we are living through a time now of massive, massive opportunity. I know the last year in many respects has probably been the most challenging year for so many of you of your lives. And I know that people have been sick. Many of you have been bereaved. We send you our solidarity and our support. But above all, we want to send a message of hope because we know that we can make this country the best country in the world in which to be born, to live, to love, to work, to prosper, and to go into old age. All of that can be done. We are a national party in the executive in the north, leading the opposition in the south, but more importantly, much more importantly, on the ground with you, embedded in our community, standing up for you, for the regular people, the extraordinary, wonderful, regular people of Ireland. We draw our strength and our inspiration from you. So we are asking you to stay this journey with us because change is coming and you are driving it. And we are the vehicle to give expression to that in the Assembly, the Executive, the Dáil, the Seanad, in local councils and on the ground in our communities. There is so much work to be done, so much that needs to change. But the great news is that we are more than fit for it. We are determined. 1 year on from that historic election, we will not be stopped because you will not be stopped. So be a Gilin, Toga Boga, and we will see you very, very soon.